Okay, so for today's video, we're going to talk about the direct and indirect pathway of the basal ganglia, and especially how it relates to inhibition and excitation. Two things to know here is when something is inhibited, it means that GABA is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for that. If something is excited, that means that glutamate is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for that. To start, we're going to do the indirect pathway because it's the longer one. It's indirect, right? So it's got more steps to it. So indirect pathway, what we want to start with here is motor cortex, right? And then that's going to go to the striatum. Okay. So there's the striatum. You want to draw arrows so that we know the direction of movement here, right? And what this is going to do, I'm just going to switch the color. What that does is it excites. So it uses glutamate to the striatum. So it's going to excite the striatum, okay? Now, from the striatum, we're going to go to a structure called the GPE, or globus pallidus externus. I just don't want to write all that out, but it's called the globus pallidus externus. And then there's also the globus pallidus internus. So we're going to call that the GPI, okay? And we do want to make the distinction that they're not fully connected, right? So that's an important distinction to make because they connect to different structures within the indirect pathway here. So we want to label this one as inhibitory, right? Inhibitory. And then the GPE, it's going to go to a structure over here. I'm going to draw it, called the subthalamic nucleus. Okay. So it's going to go like that. Boom. And what that's going to do is it's going to send an inhibitory signal to the subthalamic nucleus. From the subthalamic nucleus, we're going to go to the GPI, so the globus pallidus internus. And then from the GPI, so there's the thalamus. So subthalamic below, and then thalamus above. And that's going to send a signal like that. And then that's going to be an inhibitory signal. So again, inhibitory is GABA, right? And glutamate is the excitatory neurotransmitter. So that's going to go to the motor cortex. And the motor cortex, it's motor, right? So movement. So that's what decides the initiation of movement, right, within the basal ganglia. And so that's going to be excitatory. So that's the indirect pathway. Let me just make sure. Oh, I forgot a structure called the substantia nigra, which is super important. Because, and I might do this in a separate video, but that's where dopamine is produced. So in, just a side note, but in situations where an individual has a hyperkinetic movement disorder, that's dopaminergic cells. So cells that produce dopamine in the substantia nigra are going to be, they're going to degenerate, and then that affects movement ultimately, and then that's what causes symptoms like tremor, inability to kind of control movement with diseases like that. So just a side note, but so the substantia nigra is going to go to the striatum. And like, I don't want to like overwhelm or anything like that, but the striatum is also built up of two different, just a side note, just so you guys know, but it's made up of the caudate nucleus and the putamen. And so that's going to be the indirect pathway. Thank you.